Hello. I think this is around the time that we should be getting started. And I see the first thing on the agenda. Well, let me step back up a little bit further. This is a continuation of our regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. It's June 1st. It is 4:40. I note that one of our commissioners is not here. And what I'm going to suggest is that we go ahead and move into executive session and hope he can catch us there.
That works for me, so we can get going.
Okay. In that case,
Had you made the motion yet?
I had not, and Peter was just about to say something.
I was just about to say, you have to do the motion and I'm ready to read it in, and I sent the Zoom link.
Okay, excellent. I move the board into executive session for the following purposes.
Pursuant to CRS 24-64024B for the Board of County Commissioners to have a conference with the county attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions relating to CRS 25-12103 and what follows, as well as CRS 30-15302.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the board will adjourn into executive session. No written minutes will be kept. No decisions will be made. We will be back by 4:50 to proceed with our public agenda.
Sounds good.
And we're back. We're just waiting for the rest of the team to get here and we'll get going. First thing on the agenda is quick consent agenda.
And just a reminder to pull the one item for the tourism board. I believe when you make that, the resolution needs to be amended from what is currently in the packet.
Okay. So I move, if there, well, let's wait till Sean's here. So I move that we, unless anybody has any other of those 5 consent agenda items, I would go ahead and tender a motion to approve all except number 3 that we would pull out for discussion, and that's the Tourism Bureau.
One quick second.
Sure.
I'll go ahead and read them real quick here. Item number 1, consideration of approval of the warrant register. Item number 2, consideration of approval of resolution number 21-47 to extend the emergency disaster declaration. Item number 3 is being pulled. Item number 4, consideration of approval of rescission of the Clear Creek County COVID-19 travel quarantine policy. Item number 5, consideration of approval of resolution number 21-48, ratifying employment agreement between Clear Creek County and Brian Bosshart and the appointing county man and appointing the county manager.
So I don't think it would hurt to pull 2148 and maybe have Peter give a quick readout of that for any of the members of the public who might be here. To me, there's no debate on whether I'm gonna vote for it, but I know it's been a subject that's come up with the paper, and I think it might be worth doing that.
Okay. I'm all right with that.
Okay.
So
Randy, I know you made them.
I'll just make that a friendly amendment to pull numbers 3 and 5.
Second.
Okay, interpreting that motion as approval of items 1, 2, and 4. All in
Yes.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item number 5. Brian, can you give us a little explanation of this one? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Peter. Your name is Peter.
that's all right. No, I knew what you were talking about. The reason we put this resolution out there, it's pretty self-explanatory. The resolution, if you read the language of it, essentially explains why we did this. But essentially today, we are formally appointing county manager Brian Bosser as the county manager. So we're doing it through a resolution. His employment begins June 7th. That is his hiring date, and that is when he will be considered hired. The publication or the names of the 3 candidates were made public in the paper more than 2 weeks ago. So this really ratifies the action that we had taken back in April 29th and makes sure that we are compliant with the open meetings law.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter. That satisfies me.
I think we probably, at this point, want to address these with separate motions. Do I hear a motion to approve resolution 21-48?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Resolution 21-49 to appoint members to the Clear Creek County Tourism Bureau Board of Directors. I know we had some conversation about this in a work session earlier today. Who wants to share their thoughts?
I'll go real quick. I appreciate the conversation we had. I think it was really healthy. Again, I feel like myself, I'll speak for myself as a board of the county commission, have not done a great job in making sure that we have the right diversity in that group, and we have specifically deep expertise with related to marketing and related to tourism. I know we have some very committed business owners and executives in different tourism related operators. I'm very grateful for their assistance, and I'm in no way suggesting that they be replaced. I'm just saying, I think in my mind, we really need to focus on rounding out that board with the marketing and the specific tourism and promotional related. And to Randy's point, being able to also focus the efforts of tourism in a way that's holistic and strikes the right balance between the different stakeholders in our community. And I do feel like the co-owner of Frozen Fire meets that criteria. I know we have a difference of opinion about the potential for conflicts of interest. So with that said, if we're going to draw a hard line, preventing her from being on the board. I'm going to probably create a pretty high standard for the next person that we bring on the board.
I feel that, I mean, I actually agree with a lot of what Sean says. I think in this case, there's a conflict of interest issue and a manner of presentation in the meeting that caused me to choose to reject that candidate. In the interest of that diversity, I think what we have on the board right now is basically we have a director who knows a good deal about marketing. But we need more marketing people on the board, and I do agree with that. But we also need that diversity, I think, of someone that reflects some other interests that have to do with recreation that aren't simply business owners as well. And having been a business owner, I'm certainly not denigrating being a business owner. I know you get in the business of marketing your own business, and you tend to learn as you go. And I really don't know the backgrounds of the other business owners who are on the board, so I can't speak to that. I haven't looked at I don't recall their degrees or anything else, what they studied or their prior work histories, but my inclination is to favor Cameron Marlin and not Brandy.
Okay. Yeah, and I already said what I have to say about Miss Davis, the owner of Frozen Fire. I just can't vote to appoint her. I do think that Cameron Marlin would be a fantastic addition to this board, especially if we're looking at that board with a diversity lens, which Sean, I agree with you is appropriate. She's her stake is a little different than those tourism serving businesses. And her background's a little bit different, and I think will be welcome. I also note that Tourism Bureau is recommending her appointment, and so I would support the appointment of Cameron.
Yeah, and one thing I'll note in a friendly way is the fact that the tourism director and/or board wants to have a certain person on the board. We had a long discussion about self-appointing boards, and I have a little bit of discomfort with that level of endorsement. And again, I think it is the three of our responsibility to find the best candidate. And I think it would be great if we find people who are found to be non-threatening and fit in with the existing culture. But I also think it's very important that we find the right expertise and the right operational horsepower to lend to that board as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I would take the board supporting an applicant as a positive and not a requirement. Totally agree with you on that, Sean. So then do we care to take action today? I heard two of us say that we'd like to appoint Cameron Marlin.
I'll probably sit that vote out.
I'd make a motion that we amend Resolution 21-49 to appoint the one candidate, Cameron Marlin.
I'll second that motion.
Sorry.
Sean got the second. Is that clear, Peter, for you to?
Yes, that's all I need. And I'll get the revised resolution to Beth, and that's the one that will be recorded.
Okay. Motion on the table and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'll abstain.
Okay, note the abstention. Thank you all.
Did we approve, maybe I missed it. Did we approve the other consent items via motion? We did? Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
We did a motion for 1, 2, and 4, then one for 5.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the next thing, work session to discuss recreational sports shooting in the St. Mary's area, and we've got till about 5:30 on this one. Peter, would you like to introduce this topic?
Sure. Absolutely. So we have received, all the commissioners, I believe, have received some emails from different property owners in the St. Mary's area that were forwarded to me and to staff relating to shootings that are going on private land in near Fall River Road. And the issue is essentially is that there's just people randomly shooting, and the noise is disturbing the neighbors significantly. It's causing a disturbance to their quiet enjoyment of their property. And so the board is extremely concerned, understandably, about this, and has asked us to determine whether or not there are options to address this. And candidly, I think board members may have even responded to some of the property owners themselves with information that we'd provided, specifically the statutes that really govern this area, which are 30-15, 25-12-104, as well as 30-15-302. And then there are related statutes. I can give just a brief point, which is that 30-15 is a statute that allows the Board of County Commissioners to designate certain areas as areas where you would not allow, it would be unlawful for any person essentially to discharge a firearm. There are requirements in there that have to do with density, and there is a question as to whether or not the density in that particular area would satisfy the statute. I am not sure if Matt Taylor is on, but we can bring him in, as well as Fred Rollenhagen. Would be great, just to also give some information, because I know Matt was looking into the density. So that's one of the statutes. The other statute is 25-12-104, which is essentially a nuisance statute. It allows the county or a property owner to actually file a claim to enjoin, meaning stop this type of action. The requirement there, however, is that the noise must be at a level to exceed what is required as set forth in statute. And whether we as a county had our own noise ordinance, we couldn't actually make it more restrictive. Most of the county ordinances that you'd see in the state are pretty much duplicative. The reason why a lot of counties adopt their own noise ordinances, because this way they can just cite them with a county violation rather than have to go necessarily and do the actual lawsuit to enjoin an action. That being said, it seems difficult. It's really unclear as to whether or not the decibel levels of the shooting would necessarily exceed the noise levels on the various properties. One of our options, and we will discuss this in more detail, I'm sure, is possibly to have it measured to see. It's very difficult to measure random shooting, as opposed to the general noise when it comes to construction or mining or something like that that's usually picked up. So that's pretty much where we're at. And the short answer is we are limited with what we can do. That being said, I think the board and frankly staff are very concerned and sympathetic to this situation. Nobody would want to be sitting in their house and hear gunfire, even in the distance. One of the things that statutes that 30-15-302 also looks to is whether or not there's proof. That one option would be, is there a danger to the public? And in that instance, we'd have to demonstrate that there are gun shells or something like that on the property of the people that are complaining, to demonstrate that there's actually some potential danger to them. The statute would allow the sheriff in that instance to go in and enforce it. And I know the sheriff's office has been called out at various times to this area, and unfortunately has not been able to establish that there's any violation of the statute for the reasons we indicated. So that's pretty much the overview.
Okay, so under the current law, not talking about ordinances we could pass, how would this situation be different if a sheriff's deputy observed that what was happening was not safe, as is claimed by some of the people in that neighborhood?
So if a sheriff deputy actually observed, and I don't want to step on the sheriff's, I see he's on, so he's welcome to answer too, but essentially, if a sheriff's deputy actually witnessed some sort of shooting that could endanger somebody in another property, essentially seeing that it was going across a property line, then very well they could take action because they've witnessed it, they've seen, but they'd also know how is it endangering that person. So for example, if the gun is being fired in a direction where it could actually cross the property line from which it's being shot and hit somebody, then I think you could make an argument. But I will let the sheriff speak to it if he wants to. I'm not sure if he wants to.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, it's every incident is different. Like you said, I've had officers up in St. Mary's 4 or 5 times on the shooting complaint. And every time they go up there, they find that this guy is shooting in a safe manner, which the residents up there debate that fact, but I got to trust my officers on what they found up there. And so far, they have not found anything that would endanger anybody. If they do, then yes, there are criminal charges that can be filed on that person. And you stated that it's probably reckless endangerment or, something like that we could charge the person with.
Rick, maybe I can ask a follow-up. Did your deputies look at the surroundings and say the location that this person is shooting in is safe, the direction and location is safe, or did they just not witness unsafe shooting while they were there?
They didn't witness the shooting, but they were taken to where the gentleman was shooting and which direction he was shooting, and they found it to be in a safe direction.
And they were taken there by whom?
The guy that was shooting.
Okay, because I, and I'm not an expert on this, but I saw the picture, and it kind of looked like there was like a pole and then an open field, and they were setting a target on top of a pole, and then Fall River Road is just in the background of this photo.
Not like it. I'd have to talk to my officers. I wasn't there, so I couldn't say, but I have to trust what they find on scene, and if they find that it was a safe drop, then it would be a safe drop or backdrop.
Yeah, I saw that photo too, and I can't imagine that that's what they saw when they were there that day, because that wouldn't, there's no way that could be considered safe shooting, with shooting at a target on a pole.
Right.
With an open, with a line of sight through that to the road. So.
Right. I have to agree with Randy. I trust my officers. They qualify every 3 months. They know how to shoot guns. They know what a safe drop is, or backdrop is. And if it's a post with a sign on top of it with Fall River in the background, they would probably cite the guy for writing or for reckless endangerment at that point.
What's the source of the photo that you're referencing with the posts and the Fall River in the background?
That was apparently, from my understanding, posted on Facebook and captured by one of the residents, and it was forwarded, I believe it probably to all of the commissioners, but I know for a fact it was forwarded to Randy because he was kind enough to forward it to me. George probably saw it as well. And I believe that was pulled off of a Facebook page.
I think it was actually, I might be mistaken, but I thought it was a Facebook post by one of the shooters that somebody had nabbed off of Facebook.
That's exactly what I meant. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear.
Well, maybe I didn't hear
their Facebook page,
right.
but I believe one of the residents around there is who pulled it off and provided it to you.
Okay,
Yes,
what I'm about to say is going to be no surprise to anyone. You see lots of different things on social media. I'm wondering how appropriate is it for us to take as gospel what we see in that venue.
So I think that the pulling from the Facebook page was just to evidence it was to demonstrate some evidence, but I think that the actual complaints from all the neighbors is what is driving this, not
Sure.
necessarily that picture. And so that I think is prompting it. Randy, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think you were about to say something.
Well, I agree with Sean that I certainly wouldn't convict anybody, write a ticket, or do something based on Facebook. However, photographic evidence is clearly Fall River Road in the background. And if you could, I don't know, I haven't met the people that were doing the shooting, but if it's them in the picture and it's them directing their guns towards this thing that I saw, then whatever was going on at that moment was either a dramatization of something that they were not doing because it was unsafe, or they were doing something that was unsafe, one or the other, because what you can see is both weapons and both people and the target on a pole and Fall River Road clearly in the background, and that's where it is. And so it's not that photographs can't be doctored too, but it's I think what they're trying to portray is that it's some level of evidence that they pulled off, that somebody else provided, that shows that maybe the story we're hearing may not be complete.
Yeah, and I think there's nothing wrong with looking more closely at something based on some anecdotal picture you may find somewhere, but
Right.
yeah, I think we have to be careful about how much weight we assign to something of an unknown source. That's all.
Right. I wouldn't change an ordinance based on that picture or write a ticket, but I would, it's just cause to look a little more closely at the
Yeah,
situation.
that's fair.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I kind of started this line of questioning by trying to understand what the current set of options is aside from passing ordinances. One of those options would be, and this isn't an option that this board would take, would be if the sheriff's office or the sheriff decided to go up and do some fact finding and get eyes on site and see what he thinks, or ask the deputies, does this picture match the thing you saw? If we can even get our hands on the picture. As far as, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you want me to share the screenshots? I may be able to do that if you'd like.
Sure.
Would that be helpful? Okay, no promises as to what's about to happen.
And use the term screenshots pretty loosely, I guess.
Did it work? Did something show up? No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So you see right there, you should see, originally this was taken off of the Facebook page. This is, I think, the two photos that are specifically show what we're looking at. And then I'm not sure who provided this, whether this was the resident, in terms of the distance between Fall River Road and where apparently, I believe, the shooting was taking place. But these are the two, I believe, the two screenshots that we were most concerned about.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing those.
Sure.
So there's that piece, and that's like when it comes to law enforcement, like this board doesn't do that, right? And so I think we can maybe put that piece of the conversation aside. As it relates to trying to enforce the state's noise ordinance, you were saying it's a different type of action. It's not just like there's a law. It's not just we caught somebody speeding in a state controlled speed area.
Correct. We couldn't just go give them a citation for violating, for example, county ordinance. What we would do is, well, we or the property owner, and typically more the property owner, would actually file a suit under that statute alleging a violation of that statute. They'd list why it meets the criteria, and they would ask a judge to order that practice, the shooting, be enjoined, be prevented and stopped. And then, therefore, if indeed those individuals then ignored what would be called an injunction, they would be held in contempt of court. And essentially, they could have a fine for each day that they violate whatever this enjoinment is, and that could be $1,000. They could also receive some jail time as well, in contempt of court.
And then there was another legal issue, which was we need to examine, and apparently we don't have that data yet at this time. Another potential legal issue is whether the density of that neighborhood, it seems to be in question whether or not it meets the criteria to where shooting would be not allowed in that area anyway, pending the the density of the neighborhood. And the question, what we heard was that the neighborhood from some previous documentation does not meet that density, but there may be some more forthcoming evidence as a result of the additional development that's happened up there that might change that.
Right, and that's why we have Matt and Fred on the line. Essentially, the statute requires that the only way that the board could designate an area unlawful to discharge any firearms is if that area had an average population density of not less than 100 persons per square miles in the area designated. And so Matt and Fred were looking into the average population density in that, and part of that is determined through census data. So Matt or Fred, whoever wants to speak to that, to update the board, that would be helpful. But don't all do it at once.
I'll jump in. Yeah, the 2020 census data is not available to us yet, and for us to determine the population density just for that area, well, the best thing to do would be to utilize the St. Mary's census designated place, and that data is only tabulated every 10 years, at least that I can find. So we do have information on that for 2000 and 2010, and the population for during those years was 251 in 2000 and 283 in 2010. The census designated place boundary is about 1.44 square miles. And so just, looking at the 2010 population and assuming, just guessing that the population probably has not gone down, that population density would be about 196 people per square mile.
Which is about double what's required.
Yeah, it theoretically it'd have to drop to about 146 people in that area to be right at 100 people per square mile. And I highly doubt that that's happened, but that information just isn't available yet.
Thank you for that, Matt. And do you feel like that's, Peter, do you feel like that level of analysis is sufficient? Or do you think that if we wanted to pursue this, we would need to ask staff to do some kind of more formal analysis?
How soon will our 2020 census data be available?
And that may be, I'm sorry, go on.
I'm sorry, I jumped in there, George, and you were waiting for Peter to answer.
Yeah, I was just going to say we would want something a little more certain, certainly more than the 2010 data, but that hopefully should be coming soon. But staff would also hopefully be able to actually do their own survey of sorts that they could then present to the board for any ordinance that would be enacted pursuant to that statute.
Okay. And we might be able to ask, I know Gilpin County passed an ordinance like this, and they have a lot of neighborhoods on their list. So we might be able to ask, one potential outcome is that we ask staff to evaluate the density of the neighborhood by whatever means they have, including what they learned from Gilpin. And Randy, to answer your question, census data, is it September, October?
Yeah, the census data should be available end of September. And again, that's primarily for redistricting. So I'm assuming that'll be available at least at the tract level. The census designated places are a different boundary than the tract boundary. And I assume that that information will be available at the same time, but not 100% certain.
So I do want to mention, even if we meet the density requirement, the statute does still require, it does basically say that any such ordinance or resolution, and you would actually pass it by resolution, so it would be easier to do that way. It cannot prevent the discharge of any firearm on any private grounds or residence under circumstances when the firearm can be discharged in such a manner as to not endanger persons or property, and also in such a manner as to prevent the projectile from any such firearm from traversing any grounds or space outside the limits of that residence. So, or residence or grounds. So my point is that we would then need to have something that would demonstrate that this action does actually move beyond the property from which it's being shot.
Mhm. So that would give the sheriff's office a different range of criteria to evaluate.
Right. And again, do you look for shell casings, you know, out there that have gone beyond the private land that it's being shot from? And if so, can you document that?
It wouldn't be the casing. The casing's harmless. It would be the
Right.
actual bullet,
Right. You'd be looking for the projectile slug.
Right.
which, yeah, would probably go somewhere besides their property.
Then we'd have to make sure that bullet was fired from the gun that we had. It's not that easy.
No,
CBI has a lot bigger things to do than chase down bullets like that.
Mhm.
Because that's where we'd have to send all the bullets to, is to CBI to get them tested. And we'd have to confiscate the weapon.
Yeah.
Not easy. It's not an easy fix. I wish there was an easy fix to it. But
Well,
we have shooting all over the county. Montaigne Park. I mean, I hear it from my house on Montaigne Park, and that's all Forest Service up there. We had one guy shooting up there with tannerite and started a forest fire that we had to have slurry bombers come in. So the danger is there. I see it, but you know, we can only go so far with the laws that we have.
You know, one of the people here that's on chat brought up a real interesting question. When you're looking at density, the census is based on primary residence. When you're looking at the density of an area, part-time residents are the bodies that are in the area too. And it's hard to know, of course, when somebody's there that's part-time residents, but what would we be required to go? What numbers would we be required or allowed to use or would be appropriate to use?
So average population density is not defined in the statute. And there's no case law that actually interprets what average population density is. So I think it would be whatever we determine is reasonable. Do we determine that to be average full-time population density? Do we determine that just to be average population density when it is most dense, for example, when there are most visitors present? That we have some wiggle room in terms of our interpretation there. But it's not by, for example, homes or properties. It would be actually trying to determine how many people are in each particular property in that particular location.
Yeah. We spend enough time talking about how many vacant homes there are that, but either way, I think if we chose to go this, it sounds like we can, like the density is what it needs to be and we can justify that. And I'm seeing that we have just a couple minutes left, so maybe we should talk about what our next steps are, what kind of direction we want coming out of this.
And just to give you an idea of what staff was thinking, and Fred, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my belief was that we were going to investigate seeing, first of all, if we could get the gunshot decibels measured from the location of the closest property to next to that property line. And part of that is securing an expert, somebody who is actually certified with the calibration of the appropriate instrument and will meet certain standards designated in the case law. Amy Saxton, who will be back tomorrow, She couldn't join us, but what she did indicate was that she will reach out to her contacts that she had spoken to when we evaluated the shooting range in Clear Creek County. If you remember, we did try and do some decibel levels. Candidly, it was very, very difficult to measure that, but that would probably be one suggestion. But keep in mind, under the statute, that could be done by us, or it could be done by the property owners in that area, whoever wanted to do that. So the issue would be, does the county want to move forward with that and take that responsibility unto itself, or allow the property owners to simply secure that with a private cause of action, which the statute entitles them to? The other option would be, of course, to look in, and I'll be honest, it's probably a much more cumbersome and difficult option, which is to pursue the idea of designating the area as a place where it's illegal to discharge a firearm, just because of what the sheriff was really commenting on, which is the difficulty to demonstrate whether or not those guns were fired, those bullets that are found, and where that landed versus where it was shot from.
Is there any sort of informal path as well that we might pursue in the meantime, which would be involve some kind of a communication from someone from county government or the sheriff's office to the shooters that might yield the desired result, or has this already happened?
I'd be willing to send out a letter. I think everybody up there is well aware of the fact. We could go to their homeowners meeting and explain, basically you can shoot on your property if you have a safe backdrop, but I think everybody knows that. Peter, is there a homeowners association? Can they make a rule that they cannot shoot in that homeowners association, but then if somebody does shoot, then they have to take them to civil court? It's not a law enforcement issue. It would be a homeowners association issue.
Right. So if there is a homeowners association there, and I'm not really sure, I thought we determined that it wasn't within an association, but Fred, maybe I was wrong about that. But presumably the homeowners association could require that as part of its bylaws. They'd have to adopt it. And then if it was a violation, they would get fined for any other violation, similar to, parking your truck on the front lawn or something that you might find in the bylaws of an HOA. The only caveat to that is that if indeed they are trying to enforce a gun regulation, that area is preempted to the state unless otherwise given to private citizens. So constitutionally, they may have an issue with that. You don't tend to see that in community bylaws.
I mean, the thing that concerns me is it just doesn't sound, the paths that we've described so far don't sound that promising to me, right? I mean, knowing how hard it is to capture, or just the nature of gunfire doesn't lend itself to impressive average decibel readings, right? And I think we learned that when we were doing the research around the shooting range. So I'm just trying to think about other ways that we might reach an acceptable solution. And yeah, who knows? Maybe they can create a homeowners association up there if there's enough displeasure with what's going on right now.
Yeah, the difficulty with the average decibel reading is taking samples over time, and you have samples when most of the samples show no noise, then they average the noise, as opposed to measuring a highway or something like that. Whereas the noise, depending on the weapon from gunfire, it might be short, but it's can be pretty loud and intense, and being able to actually pick that up and know what it is rather than an average reading. I mean, an average reading is almost meaningless when it comes to gunfire.
Yeah.
It's not the same as a machine running or something like that,
So got my eyes on the clock. I am satisfied, Peter, with what you said the next steps are. I might add that I think that there's someone on Gilpin County staff, I don't know who it is, but there's someone on Gilpin County staff who can help us wrap our heads around this. They passed that rule and were unable to resolve a very similar situation. Although I think that that person did indeed have a backstop. And so our situation isn't entirely the same. That might be the only thing I would add. Would anybody else add anything else as outcomes to this?
I would just repeat what Sheriff said. I mean, the simple issues get figured out before they show up in this type of a forum. And I know that we're taking this very seriously and understand that a lot of people up there are upset about this, and we're doing our level best to find out what we can do about it legally.
Right.
Well said.
And we're not done looking, as is evidenced by the conversation and the directions.
Okay. So that concludes our work session on recreational sports shooting in the St. Mary's area. Next thing on the agenda is a work session with potential action item to determine our position on the recommendation to the Colorado Geographic Naming Advisory Board and the Federal Bureau of Geographic Names regarding a proposal from the Northern Cheyenne Nation and the U.S. Forest Service to change the name of Squaw Mountain to Mount Mestahehe. The first thing on the agenda is for this little section here is to introduce the topic briefly. So I want to invite the commissioners, and probably starting with you, Randy, because I know you've been digging into this. And then if the applicant is here and wishes to add anything, if you could raise your hand, we can bring you over and you can help introduce the topic. But I'll stop talking and hand it to Randy, and then we can fill in as needed.
Yeah, just to try to do this in only just a very few minutes here. The brief history of this is this first came to our attention in 2017, mid-year, and there was a different proposal. It was for Mount Mistanta, and that appears to have been a phonetic misspelling of a mispronunciation of the Cheyenne word for owl woman. That proposal has since been withdrawn, and it has been replaced by a proposal from the U.S. Forest Service and the Northern Cheyenne, represented by Town Olympi, who is, I have met in meetings, several of them, and she is their TEPO, their Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. And so that was put in some time back. As a matter of fact, just for a moment, I will bring this up and share screen, I believe. And this is the report, the application to the Bureau of Geographic Names, Federal Bureau. And as you can see, the spelling here is for, and it's pronounced Mistahe. And I've been mispronouncing it myself, and somebody can correct this one if I got it wrong this time, but I've heard several, and it takes a little while to get it. It's not very difficult to pronounce once you have it. And it describes that it would be, it's the location for Mount Evans, or excuse me, Squaw Mountain. And the previous proposal is listed on here too, number 9204, which has since been withdrawn. And on the second page here, you can see Town Olympi, who's the THPO, the TEPO for the Northern Cheyenne tribe in Lame Deer, Montana, and then Susan Johnson with the Forest Service. I have checked with the Forest Service. They do, obviously, since they're on this, they support changing the name. As in 2018, when in 2018, they had sent a letter that said that they basically do support changing the name of this mountain because of the derogatory nature of the name. They tend to not pick a particular name because they don't want to get between the different tribes, because they believe it is the domain of the tribes to make that proposal. I think that's all I would like to say for now, until as I look down at our guest list, at our participants. One moment, I'm going to stop sharing screen. I haven't recognized the name of someone from the Northern Cheyenne tribe right off, although I haven't scanned it for a minute. I do see representatives of the Southern Cheyenne and Arapaho, the Southern CNA, and some other folks on here, Rick Williams, who's an historian, and Lakota and a Cheyenne, I believe, from Denver, who knows a lot about this. But I don't believe, and if somebody does, if you can use the raise hand function, if there's someone here from the applicants from the Northern Cheyenne to be able to present on their behalf, they'd be welcome. And otherwise, it's back over to George and to open it up for public comment, I think, next.
Okay, I don't think I have anything to add. I think you appropriately characterized what's in front of us here, and they're asking for us to respond with our opinion on their process. Peter, do you have anything to add, or Sean?
All right now.
Nope.
There's a bunch more that I can add about the history of Miss DeHay, Al Woman, but I think I'd rather listen to the attendees first and hear the public comment before we get into that later. So.
Okay. That sounds good to me. So then what I'm going to do is open this up for public comment. I will note that we have received many emails on this topic, and 57 pages worth, I think, and read through them. Want to encourage people not to take more than 3 minutes, and to the extent possible, there's not a lot of need in repeating points that have already been made. Just a suggestion. So you can click participants and click raise hand, and we will bring you over.
I just brought Tim over.
Hi, Tim. If you could state your name and where you live, and then we'll give you 3 minutes to make your comment.
Sure, yeah. Hey, my name's Tim Swales. Thanks very much for providing this forum. I'm down here in Denver, and I just wanted to, express my support for changing the name from S Mountain to this Mestahe. It's just a very kind of offensive word to lots of people, and yeah, it would be, great to change it, and I fully support the change. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you for your comment. I see we have a lot of attendees. Don't see any with their hands up.
I think we have many that would like to speak. That's my guess. It's a matter of mastering the raised hand.
Okay, here we go. Marshall, if you could state your name and where you live, and I'm happy to hear from you. Thanks for coming. Looks like you got unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me? I don't know why the camera's not working. It's actually Heather Ulrich.
Okay, thank you, Heather. If you could state where you live, and then we're happy to hear your comment.
So I live down in Evergreen, but I still own a home up at St. Mary's. And I just wanted to chime in on the shooting issue. I think the nuisance ordinance is kind of a non-starter. I wouldn't really bother with that, I don't think. But the other, what is it, 3015-104? I think we do meet the population density requirements, although of course I know you need actual data. And then it says that private owners can have a shooting gallery, which I think is a very specific thing that nobody has. Other people are up there, just up there shooting. So I would encourage the board to pursue an ordinance under that. And the Property Owners Association up at St. Mary's is voluntary and doesn't have a lot of legal standing because of that. So I don't think the POA is in a position to do it. I think we're definitely looking to the commissioners to help us out.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Next up, I see Rick Williams on screen here. Rick, if you could unmute and state your name and where you live, we're happy to hear you.
Madako Yapi. Mila Huska imachapi Rick Williams na Lakota imachapi Tatanka Huska. My Lakota name is Tallbull, and I'm a Cheyenne descendant. I can't speak. I don't speak for either of the tribes, but I will speak as a person who is knowledgeable about why we should change that name. And briefly, is it's just not right. I mean, you know, you wouldn't. It would be so derogatory to have the English version of that word on a mountain. It would be embarrassing to everybody who lived in the county. And I think it's the good thing to do and the right thing to do to change the name. Owl Woman was a very respected Cheyenne woman, clearly an excellent choice. And we also have an Owl Woman in the Lakota stories, and it's a good story too. So you'd be doing some really good things by changing the name. So, Palami Ayala, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And I do see we have another hand up here. Oh, and Beth.
Hello.
Hi, Beth. If you could
Hello.
please state your name and where you live and make your comment.
Beth Ramsey, 1082 Silver Creek Road in St. Mary's. I can provide you if it's needed. I think the density issue is resolved. If it is not, I can provide that. I use them for grants all the time. I use the number of water taps and water usage. So not only do they have a tap, but in fact, they're using water, which means someone is there. So I can, and the taps alone are 313. So it's not in question. The census numbers are very low, but we can prove that if we need to. I would like to point out, I did a fair amount of research and I checked Mesa County's rules, Larimer County's, they've all done this, many of them since the 1970s. They have simply banned shooting anywhere where there's a residential neighborhood. Larimer County just took a temporary stance in January for the year of 2020 for the Crystal Lake subdivision by Red Feathers Lake. That shooting is happening in the Forest Service land. It's just too close to their home. And it's frankly a lot farther away than what we're experiencing in St. Mary's. So there is not a lot of question. And I'm not a lawyer, but I sort of did a little research, and the concept of endangerment in Colorado law sounds a little different to me. They're talking, you don't have to be physically injured. You don't have to be struck by a bullet. You have to be injured in basically any way. That could be emotional, psychological, that could be stress, anxiety, that can be hearing damage. And so people were reporting having pain in their ears. The definition, as I understand it, of bodily injury in the state of Colorado is physical pain, illness, any impairment, or physical or mental condition. People have physical pain in their ears because this is deafening. You are talking about 160 decibels on a 1/3 acre lot. That sound cannot possibly be contained in that lot, even if they had berms, which they don't. As a rule of the inverse ratio law, it's a simple physics question. It would be utterly impossible for the sound to dissipate, but you're talking 75 feet. There's no way. Absolutely impossible for that to be true. So I don't know if you need a decibel meter. I don't know what the law says, but it's a simple physics problem. So I can certainly offer that to you as well. I would recommend that the county look at Mesa County, look at the other counties who are doing this. No one required anyone to prove anything in order to do it. Those were all done, and it's specified in their ordinances. It was done on citizen complaint. So I have a lot of questions. Some questions I don't have an answer to. I looked for them. Does it actually require that we prove a bullet left the property, or would it be possible that a bullet would leave the property? That's endangerment in my mind. And I can tell you the last time I was on the range, I am a recreational shooter. I would never fire a caliber of weapon like I saw happening up there ever in my life in that close of a range. That is way stupid, frankly. And I can just tell you, last time I was on the range, I had a bullet that went over the target and over the berm. Luckily, I was on a range, so.
I want to
This
thank you for your
happens.
comment. We're a little over the 3 minutes here.
Sorry
But
about
thank you
that.
for your comment. And
Gotcha.
yeah, we're
Thanks.
certainly looking into it. Thank you. So in order of people who showed up, I think I saw Leah Presnell next. I hope I'm getting your name right. I'll allow you to state it yourself, Leah, if you would unmute, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
Yes, hi, my name is Leah Presnell. My household has been up in Clear Creek County and paying taxes up here since 2009. We live in an area of Idaho Springs that requires us to give squaw pass as part of the directions to our house. And every single time I say it, much like Rick Williams said before us, I'm embarrassed and regretful that I have to include a racist and sexist slur that we know is harmful to Indigenous communities because they tell us that it's harmful. So I find this continued harm to our Indigenous people wholly unnecessary and honestly really unacceptable, and really feel like the very least we can do is to not remind communities of their shared past trauma, but instead promote a sense of, at least attempt some sense of healing and honoring of the spaces that were never ours in the first place. So long story short, I wholly support our tax dollars going to the renaming of these areas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Next up, I think JD Roybal.
Yes, buenas noches todos.
Hi, thanks for joining us. If you would please state your name and where you live, and we're happy to hear you out.
JD Raval, and I live in Windsor, and it's here in Colorado también. Now, what I'm going to do is, we're all adults here, and my grandma's black, and yo soy mexicano, so I'm going to use these words, but I want this to be, it's going to be an exercise. So please, everybody hang with me just for a moment and just do this. I'm going to say a word and I'm going to pause for a moment, and then I'm going to say another word and pause. And I want you to note the emotion that you get. Nigger. Spick. Squaw. That truly is a derogatory remark. And then when you hear it in connotations from a person who is a person of color, it has a definite different meaning to it. And it has the pain. Come in. And so I hope we're all adult enough, everybody, people even listening to this, to understand where that word comes from, because I hate those words altogether. But again, this is an exercise, and I wholeheartedly support the idea of changing the names for these places that we have given recognition to that really are quite hurtful. And I appreciate you actually taking a look into this. And buenas noches todos.
Thank you for your comment. Buenas noches to you. Beth Hoover is up next.
Hello, I don't live in Clear Creek.
That's okay, Beth. If you would just state your name and where you live, and we'll hear you out.
All right. So I live in El Paso County, but my husband and I have owned a property in Victor, Colorado, which is in Teller County right next door. And first I want to weigh in exactly what everybody has been saying about the name change thus far is 100% how I feel too. And I just wanted, so I'm not going to repeat what everybody else said, what Randall said, what everybody said. But I just want to ask you, once you do change your S name, if I can borrow some of the educational literature and help, buddy on with some of the work, because we have an S Mountain in Teller County, but we're going to change it to probably a name that is the name of our cemetery, Sunnyside Mountain. And so we're going a little bit of a different route, but it's all for the same goal, and it's all for I feel like we can make it a community building project. I'm glad to hear the U.S. Forest Service is supportive of the Clear Creek S Mountain, and you've got your work cut out for you, because you have a road, you have a lodge, you have Teller County. We're lucky we only have two geological names we need to change, but they're both on Newmont Mining's property, and they're a global company. And our S Mountain has been ravaged by mining. And so what we look at from Victor is the sunny side of the mountain. So, so I just want to support everything. Randall, I can see it's not easy to talk to people about this subject, okay? And I want to just all weigh in on that gun issue too. Teller County has the same problem. We heard somebody shooting around 30 rounds in like a 60 seconds in the ravine over at their house, probably their property, or maybe it was at the local dump, I don't know, or the abandoned dump. My husband said they should not have that access to that kind of rounds. And they were just shooting at a target, I'm sure, but that was Memorial Day weekend and at dark on Saturday night, well into the dark. So this is an issue in every county that is, rural, I think, throughout Colorado. But back to the name changing thing, if you have any questions for me, I just got an okay from my Teller County Commissioner that she will write a letter of support for our two S geological places in Teller County. And thank goodness there's none in El Paso County, 0. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. And I want to encourage attendees, just keep raising your hand. We'll keep getting you over here. Next up is Anne Marie Schmidt. I know I said your name. If you would state your name and where you live, and we'll hear you out.
Hi. I'm actually speaking both for myself and my husband, Anne Marie Schmidt and Larry Schmidt. And we live up here in Blue Valley, right off of S Pass. And I guess I'd like to start with a quote by Maya Angelou: "When we know better, we do better." And for those that talk about historic namings and changing history, we know better. And we need to do better. So my husband and I support that. We drive that road to get home. We hike the path on S Mountain. And I thought that the powerful way that Mr. Roybal had us think about the emotions that nouns can provide to us. And plus, I think it is a benefit to hear from people who the namings, it would be silly for me to think of a name for the mountain because I would go with something cute. So it's somebody that it means something to. And although the S word is also a derogatory to all women, it's a derogatory name to women as well as women of color. So absolutely it needs to be supported. As a retired teacher, how we explain things and how we teach history is affected by the names and the words that we use. I'm also wondering about the namings of other, along the same line. Up here, we also have Chief and Papoose along the same range, right in a row, and all part of the same naming. And I don't know how that chain of reaction works. The other questions I don't know what the answer to is. How is the renaming funded in like for restaurants and maps and everything that has to be changed? I don't know how that all works, but I do know it must be changed. So we are both in support of that and hope that it goes through. Thank you for all your time with this. And I also, because of how this has been so much about the talk about guns and shooting, I really think that this county needs to have a hard look at that. I have a lot to say about that as well, like many other callers did, but that is a topic, this topic deserves its attention. And that topic also deserves some focused attention. So anyway, thank you for all that you're doing and your time.
Okay, thank you, Anne Marie. I see next up is Greg Markle. If you would unmute and then state your name and where you live, and we will hear you out. Or if that's Amber and you're listening for your name, Amber. Greg Markle. Okay, so let's move on. Let's keep Greg over here. If he gets unmuted, we'll certainly want to hear him. And next I see Hugh. Hugh, if you could unmute and.
Hi, I won't take very much time, but I was just wanting to also say that I'm wholeheartedly, like all the other people, in support of the name change. It just is very common sense to me, and I would just like to say that I'm glad to see this actually being discussed, and I hope that this will continue on for other issues pertaining not just to Indigenous people, but also to other marginalized groups, and just more issues focusing around marginalized groups. I'm really glad to see that happening in kind of my own county. And I'm Hugh, and I'm from Evergreen in Floyd Hill. But yeah, just glad to see that we're finally starting to have these discussions that are extremely necessary.
Thank you for your comment. And I see Greg Markle unmuted. If you would state your name and where you live, and we'll hear you out.
Greg Markle, Trail Creek. I'm in full support of this renaming. Anne-Marie kind of brought up the subject of the grouping of the three mountains, and I would support renaming all three so they had kind of a common grouping name, Native American names. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. I'm going to keep public comment open for just a minute because I know technical difficulties are real. I will take this opportunity to read a comment from Catherine Samoda supporting the proposal. And so we're going to close public comment in just a moment here.
For 1 second, George, if I could, I do see several people on here that I'm not sure if they came to speak tonight or not. I see Fred Mosqueda from the Southern Arapaho, Chester Whiteman from the Southern Cheyenne, and they may be simply watching. But I also see a Teresa, and I know that Teresa Small, who's from the Northern Cheyenne, who are the applicants. And I'm not sure if that Teresa is Teresa Small or not, and I'm not sure that everybody has the ability to raise their hand. I'm just kind of watching for a second because I heard, and I'm sorry, George, I just heard you say you're going to close public comment here in a sec.
Yeah. What I was saying is going to close public comment, but I'm going to wait a little bit while people navigate their devices. You can also click, I'm not sure if it says chat or I think it says Q&A. You can type a comment in as well.
You want me to cross anybody over just to see if they want to speak?
Why don't you try Teresa? She's supposed to be on her phone, but I don't see a phone number, so she might be on an iPhone and be showing up as a.
Okay, Teresa, if we brought you over in case you might like to make a comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, if you would please just state your name and where you live, and we'll happily hear you out.
So my name is Teresa Small. I live on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation in Lincoln, Montana. I just want to also state that I'm not speaking for the tribes. I am speaking for myself. And I've been a part of the group, just listening in from the time it started, and I fully support the name changing. Some things that came up is I think, and I feel that in totality, the collective part of humanity, there's a disconnect between who we are as human beings and the spirit of the earth. I want to say, not using my words properly right now because I feel like I'm being rushed, but I should say, and it's connected with, as people were talking and saying, the energy of, or the spirit behind using squaw. There is a, like there is a, it doesn't sit right, it doesn't resonate. And now when you give a name in honor and knowing that this lady has this done stood is someone. She lived, she breathed, she gave birth, she walked the earth with us, before us. She made way for us. It means something more than we say for it. Because we breathe life into our words. And as Native Americans or Indigenous people, we know that. So I just want to say again, I fully support this. And my name is Dunstan. So I really do support this. And I'm thankful that for talking about it.
Thank you for your comment. Much appreciated. And I saw Sheriff Albers waving his hand. Sheriff, you're welcome to speak now. You're also, I wouldn't relegate you to, you're more than welcome to speak as we deliberate as well.
Yeah, no, I just think of clarification. There's actually 4 mountains up there. There's Chief, Papoose, Warrior, and Squaw. So there's actually 4 mountains up there that are named. That's all I wanted to do, is make sure that everybody knew there was 4 mountains up there.
Right. And I just want to say that, just so people are aware, that in the meetings that we've had with the Mistahake Coalition and the representatives of the different tribes, that subject has recently come up, and it's really not a conversation that's run out so far, because everywhere there is something that is named, for example, for a tribe, they may not find objectionable. So that's a conversation that hasn't been run out about those other mountains up there, Chief and Warrior. But it may come up in the future, but nothing's been brought up about those yet from the folks I've talked to, the tribes.
Okay, and I think I see a lot of attendees who have not spoken, but I don't think we can presume all of them intend to. And we've had lots of time here, so I'm just going to give everybody a last 60 seconds if you want to scramble and find the raise hand button, and then we'll enter into deliberations.
There's one coming.
Thank you. Okay, I see Fred here. Remember you from a work session. If you could state your name, Fred, and where you live, and happy to hear you out.
Fred, you're muted.
There you go.
Can you hear me? Fred,
And
my name
now-
is Fred Mosquito. I'm with the Cheyenne Arapaho Tribes of Oklahoma, and I'd just like to state that the tribes are in agreement with the Northern Cheyennes on the name change to Mistahit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Catherine Samota. Catherine, if you could state your name and where you live.
Hi, my name is Catherine Smoda. I live in Lakewood, Colorado, and I have had the honor of working with Fred and Teresa and Chester and Crystal and a bunch of other folks on our renaming efforts. And the stories that I hear outside of these big meetings that we hear in our little coalition meetings are quite profound. And having spent time in Indigenous communities and learning about the experiences, both historical and contemporary, I think this is one way that we can start to raise awareness about how we can begin healing and the reconciliation process between tribes. And that really appreciate the commission for taking this on and having this discussion and pushing this forward. And so I just want to express my support for the Northern Cheyenne proposal and appreciate you all for making time for this.
Thank you. And I think our patience was rewarded with those comments. I see another hand raised. I want to encourage people who wish to comment to go ahead and work on getting your hands up.
Just brought her over, and there she goes. Well,
Okay. Hi, Autumn. If you could state your name and where you live, and we'll hear you out.
You're muted now.
I saw that too. Autumn, you're
Autumn,
muted.
you are muted. I think you hit the button twice there.
Whoops. Okay. Thank you for hearing me speak at this point. And I would like to say to you, Randy, that conversation might be sooner than you think, considering there is a bill going through to rename high schools and middle school mascots. And then secondly, my family is fully for this proposal to change. My eldest is Native American. Their tribe is Assiniboine Sioux. And hearing that word does bring them pain. It's very hurtful for them, as it's not what it once was before, well, we got a hold of it. And we need to make sure those harms are repaired, because they are felt in generations that haven't necessarily been able to live and learn their own culture. Sorry, I am Autumn Brooks and I am from Clear Creek. And again, we fully support the change.
Thank you for your comment, Autumn. I'm going to do the same thing I did last time. I want to make sure anybody who's here to talk gets the opportunity. So we'll just pause for about 60 seconds, knowing that finding your voice is a technical term in 2021 and not only a matter of confidence.
Yeah, and I'd like to, because of what Autumn just said, I'd just like to say that my comment regarding those other mountains was not about whether they should or should not be changed. Because for the most part, whether they should or should not be changed and what they would change to is I tried to think of as in the eyes of the people who are the most greatly offended and know when they've been offended. And all I was trying to state was that in the conversations we've had, other than to mention it, all I heard from those folks was, we need a little time to think about that. And so not every place that I might think is offensive that I might guess was offensive would be thought of as offensive by somebody else, and it's not my place to figure that out for them.
Thank you for that. And then it looks like we have Paul here. Paul, if you could state your name and where you live, and we're happy to hear you out.
Thank you, George. My name is Paul Soderman. I live in Boulder, Colorado. I'm actually a guest on the land of the Arapaho people here. I've been living in Boulder about 35 years, but I'm in full support of the change of S Mountain. I just wanted to mention that maybe a little bit more about the why it's important to someone like myself. My ancestor committed a lot of atrocities against Native Americans, and I worked with the families of the descendants of the people that he massacred in Nebraska. His name was General William Selby Harney. And mountain in the Sacred Black Hills was his name, Harney Peak. And it took a few years, but we worked with the USBGN to change the name. And it wasn't because we're trying to be good people or do something, other than what we were led to do by an effort to change the energy of that place and work with the elders there. And I've been there now since with Lakota people, and the energy of that place is completely different. It's awesome to see. And it's now named Black Elk Peak. And it was quite a process. It wasn't easy. It was hard. But the reason why it was important was that the only best way I can describe it is the energy and vibration of that place has changed. And what's been lifted there is a sense of oppression, right? And that's how it's described to me by the elders. That's what they feel. And I can palpably feel it as well. That's why I think these name changes are not just hip, cool, or a thing to do right now. They actually help heal a lot of historical trauma and unresolved grief. So I just wanted to say that much. Thank you, Palam Yellow.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just gonna pause here. We're gonna.
Oh, I got another one.
Beth, I see you reserved your remaining time for another comment. I believe Beth Hoover, El Paso County. Feel free to speak.
Well, I just wanted, I could see where this is going. I mean, you're going to change the mountain's name. I wanted to congratulate Clear Creek on being the very first S Mountain or S geological place in Colorado to change its name. And I just asked Jenny Runyon from US Geological Survey, how many in Colorado places are on their radar? And there's 36. So I'm kind of relieved that I don't have any in El Paso County and we only have 2 in Teller County. But I feel bad for Archuleta County, and there's other counties. And so you guys are going to help us lead on this. So I appreciate that, actually, I really do. And I look at it as we want to just change this into a real positive, let's put a positive spin on it, because we've had so much divisiveness and negativity, and let's have a project where we just don't have any of that, or as little as possible. Just keep on going, and let's knock out every county that has has a name. And apparently there's challenges like private companies that bear the name. Like in your area, isn't there an ski resort? But I think it's not functioning. Isn't it historic?
It does function. It just has a different name now. They changed
Oh, it
it.
does have a different name. Well, then, so you guys that really have, you've already paved the way for the rest of the counties in Colorado. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And I think, Sean, Randy, I think I'll close public comment if you're okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
Yep, good by me.
Okay. So public comment is closed. So now we're going to talk amongst ourselves about how we feel about this. Who would like to start?
I have a question, and hopefully it's not a long answer, because I think it's a simple question I should probably know the answer to. But I understand the Forest Service position on approving a change, and then they kind of are neutral on what the change is. What is the change process? Is it were a series of competitive bids put forth, and the one bid that we're talking about now was essentially the winning bid? And if so, what was the process that was selected, and by who?
Well,
Or
first,
maybe it was the only application. I don't know. I want to know more about the second part of it. That's all.
yeah, it's the only application that's in, and it's the only application, and it replaced the original application that we saw in 2017, which was an attempt to do the same thing. It was a phonetic misspelling of a mispronunciation done by someone else. They withdrew it, and the Northern Cheyenne put up Owl Woman, and it's the only proposal that's up. And what it's come down to is that the Southern Cheyenne and Arapaho and the Northern Arapaho have all, through meetings at least, and we don't have documents from at this time, have favored that, said they support it. And there have even been some conversations. Fred Musquade is still on the screen. There have been some conversations back and forth with the Ute tribes as well, and they supported it. But the real decision maker is not us. The real decision maker is the Bureau of Geographic Names. And then there is the Colorado Geographic Naming Advisory Board, which, and both of them are kind of waiting to hear what Clear Creek thinks right now, because we're the political jurisdiction within which the mountain sits. The Forest Service intentionally stayed out of it and has not officially entered back in, because at the time they were waiting to see if other competing names came up. And I talked to them today. I've talked to Monty Williams some time back. He's 100% supportive of it, but officially the Forest Service does not favor a particular name in case there's still ongoing conversations. Jennifer Runyon with the Bureau of Geographic Names actually sends these proposals out to all 500 and some tribes in the United States to see if anybody has an opinion, and leaves that open for a certain period of time. And if Jenny, Ms. Runyon were, she can probably describe the process a little better than I can with regard to that, but that's how we got where we are.
Thanks. That's totally satisfactory. I appreciate that. And I guess I'll weigh in first, just because I usually can weigh in very quickly. I'm kind of aligned with the Forest Service. I've heard many compelling reasons why the current name is not acceptable, and I agree with that. In terms of how it gets changed and by whom and to what, I don't necessarily feel like I don't have a lot of energy around that. I'm fine with letting the process go through like it's going now, without weighing in one way or the other on this particular name.
Yeah, and I guess I view it as, I view our response, I mean, I guess it's not binary, because we received a request to respond to, I think they can't really be detached, right? It's like, do you want to change the name? And the proposed name is Mistahe. And so, Sean, I'm just trying to understand your comment. Are you suggesting that we respond that we're neutral, or?
I'm just saying, I've heard, well, I just don't have a lot of, I mean, one thing I've heard from some people in the community is that it's a bit of a confusing name, and that could create some minor problems. And I think that, you know, I could understand why people would say that. And again, I don't know that if it doesn't need my endorsement, probably not. I mean, I think the important thing is that the name that offends people that's in place right now is replaced with something. And again, I personally don't have a lot of energy around what it's replaced with. I trust the process, the people who are doing it, and whether someone comes in with a competing bid at the 2-yard line and people rally to that competing bid, I would give you the same answer.
I think, yeah, I think at this point, we were sitting in a complete, we already are in a, have been in a neutral position entirely on the subject since we changed it last year from an opposed position, which was done erroneously in 2017. I think, and when I talked again with, and please, Jenny, if I mischaracterize this in any way, Ms. Runyon with the U.S. Bureau of Geographic Names, please raise your hand and correct me. But my understanding was that because there was no significant, well-stated opposition to this, because there was not a competing, yeah, and there she put her hand up, because there was not a competing proposal, that we were, and I'll go ahead and finish my recollection of the conversation, that we were kind of the last piece of the puzzle that needed to decide what we thought. We probably could do what Sean said. I will just state for the record, it's not based on all the conversations and the people I've talked to and the reasons for this particular choice of name. I favor differently, and I'll explain more in a little bit why. I'll give the reasons why, but why I favor the proposed name.
Okay. And Ms. Runyon, thank you for joining us. Anything you would like to add about understanding the USBGN's process?
Thank you all. I appreciate you allowing me to join this call too. No, and then Randy has been involved with this almost since day one. He's got a real good grasp of the background, the process. The fact is that yes, the U.S. Board on Geographic Names, the BGN, is a reactive body. We can only respond to a specific proposal sent to us. We're well aware there's a lot of interest right now in all these geographic names, but without a specific proposal from whether it be an individual, an organization, a government body, a tribe, anyone can submit a proposal, but we are not going to go out looking for names to change. You have to come to us with a proposal, and you can't just say we want to change the name. You must submit a replacement name. And Randy is right. The history is it was Mount Mastanta. And then somewhere along the way, the Northern Cheyenne let us know that Mesta was the correct name for Owl Woman, and it was submitted as a counter proposal. The original proponent for Mount Mastanta withdrew her proposal and now supports the Cheyenne, Northern Cheyenne proposal. And yes, that is the only name on the table. So we would very much like to have the county's opinion. Obviously the options are yes, no, or you could say no opinion or no objection, but we would prefer to have a yes or a no. And then the next step, yes, indeed, it goes to the Colorado Geographic Names Advisory Board. And when they meet and have their recommendation, probably the same conversations you're having here, it'll be sent on to the USBGN, and our board makes the final decision. So it's good to hear all the public comments, but this is exactly how the process is supposed to work. And I do look forward to hearing formal statements from the tribal governments that have weighed in tonight, because to date we have not received those in writing. So we would like to have those of the tribes that have weighed in tonight, because right now all we have is the support of the Northern Cheyenne. So thank you all very much. And anyone have any questions? Randy has my contact information. I'm happy to talk to anybody here on this call and explain the process if it's at all confusing. So thank you again for your time. Appreciate it.
And with that said, I mean, if your preference is a yes or a no, I'm fine with this board, with going along with a recommendation for the yes. I was just expressing how personally I kind of align with what the Forest Service has done. I think that makes sense to me, but
Sure.
If that is less than not what you're looking for, then I'm okay with the yes also.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. Yeah, no, and I guess to clarify, actually, in this case, I know early on with the Mount Mastanta proposal, that was the Forest Service response, that they were fairly neutral. They supported a change, but not necessarily to Mastanta. If there another name came along, that was fine too. Since then, since they did in fact endorse and actually helped submit the proposal for Mesta Mountain, they now actually support it. They're not just neutral. They actually support that name, is my understanding. So if that helps at all. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Go ahead, George.
I don't have any other questions, so if you do.
Thanks.
No, but it's nice to see you, Miss Runyon, again. So
Thank you. Yeah, same here. Mutual.
she's been spending time teaching me things about how this process works. So
Well, there's a lot about county government you all could teach me that I'm clueless about. So this is my little niche. So thank you.
Yeah, I took Sean at his word a moment ago when he said it's just he was trying to decide how to feel about it and not be in the way. And I want to be clear that that is exactly my comment a little bit ago back about the comment about what should and shouldn't change is rooted in that as well. I have felt very strongly about this particular mountain for a few years now. And it's not part of the subject tonight, and it's all rooted around the discussion around Mount Evans, which will come up at some point in the future as well, because there are about 4 or 5 proposals for that mountain. Owl Woman was, and since no one else brought it up, I hesitate to speak on behalf of, the indigenous tribes, because in my opinion, that's how we got where we are a lot, was making decisions, speaking for them. But since we finished public comment and some people didn't bring up exactly who Owl Woman was, the reason I want to do this is because so many really wise people on here, like Chester Whiteman and Fred and a whole bunch of others, have explained to me that it's the reason these names hurt so bad is because it's rooted so deeply that simply changing the name itself is while it's very, very important to them, is far less important if it doesn't help re-educate us. And so for that reason, I just think that if we say we want to go along with this, the history of Owl Woman is that she was from the early 1800s, a very prominent Cheyenne woman. She was the daughter of White Thunder, who was a prominent medicine man with the Cheyenne. She was the wife of William Bent's Fort, and the mother of George Bent. And she was known as a peacemaker who helped bring both tribes together, and the tribes and the white people that were coming through the area during that time, and was able to minimize conflict and help them coexist until the Laramie Treaty of 51 and the Fort Wise Treaty of 61 started changing things. And she died in I believe it was the late 1840s. Didn't have the exact year. I don't recall it right off from reading about it sometime back and then hearing about her. And so she represented something that was real important about peace, as opposed to, genocide and theft and murder and all that other stuff. And as a result, she was entered into the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame in 1985, just for the record. And then probably because of the gold rush, but some of the rules started changing about the willingness to coexist and moving people out of the way. And the Treaty of Fort Wise in 61 went a long ways towards that. And then the Cheyenne and Arapaho were told that they were being sent to southeastern Colorado, as I understand. And Governor Evans, of course, we know what he did, and he ultimately created a proclamation that any person who was deemed a hostile Indian could be shot on sight and their stuff taken. The important part about putting their stuff taken away is that it gives you an additional motivation to decide whether somebody's hostile or not. And so there were a number of people, including Black Kettle, that met with Evans and Chivington. And they weren't given a lot of promises, but they were told to head down by Fort Lyon and ultimately encamped at Sand Creek. And then Chivington, on the 28th of November, 1864, declared martial law and wouldn't let anybody or any news out of town or any communication out of town, and marched with about 850 troops, where mostly Cheyenne, and some Arapaho were all camped. And they were told that if they raised a white flag and an American flag, they'd be allowed to live. And that's how they could identify themselves. Be where you're supposed to be and hold up these symbols, and then you'll be considered not hostile. And then they had 4 12-pound cannons, and they opened fire on them from this hill directly above the encampment. And the rest is history. And they mutilated the bodies, including cutting off all kinds of body parts, genitals of both men and women, and rode with those as souvenirs. And in some cases, those genitals stretched around the horns of their saddles as they rode back, in victory from what was depicted at first as a great military victory, until later it was found out not to be. And that's what why he was forced out of office. So when we look up, so it's all tied together. We're not here talking about Mount Evans tonight, except that the northeast ridge of the Mount Evans Massif has a few mountains on it that have those names and carry those names. And so we've been saying S word, but the word squaw has anointed that mountain, which is basically the horn of the saddle stretching off of Mount Evans. And so I never knew what it meant before, but looking at it today, it's like every time I hear it, every time I see it, I can't help but think the entire story. And that it's important that all of us know that, that it's true that all over the world, people have taken advantage of each other and people have fought, and we use that as an excuse sometimes to not right wrongs. But we pretty much took a human lawnmower to this planet or to this continent and removed the people who were here from any ability to have power and influence over what happened after that. And so renaming a mountain like this, or saying, yes, we support renaming the mountain, and sending something to the Colorado Geographic Naming Advisory Board and off to the BGN is a good thing to do, but I just didn't want to make that decision tonight without explaining the story behind it, so that they can carry with it some education. What's in a name? I really like what J.D. Roybal said a little while ago when he made us go through those words. I've heard this story a lot, that we're changing history. How can we remember history if we don't repeat it? Well, we don't have a whole lot of Mount Hitlers anywhere. And we don't have a lot of stuff that's named after things for words we recognize. Sometime back around high school, I started using the N word in reaction to people that were racist to me, when I finally became angry enough about what it was after the church blew up in Birmingham and those 4 little girls were killed. And I only got 2 kinds of reactions when I used the word, trying to reflect back to them what they sounded like to me in exaggeration. And they either just got madder and more entrenched in their hatred because I'd humiliated them, or they actually misunderstood me and thought I was with them, and it reinforced them. So it occurred to me that the best way to remove certain kinds of ideas are to remove those words from common usage. And as long as we have our mountains named after these things, and we perpetuate those names, those words, as if they're okay to say, we in some measure aid and abet the persistence of those ideas that are accomplished or are connected to those words. So anyway, I just wanted to blurt all that out this evening, so that we know that we're not here just to change a name. We're here to try to do what little tiny bit of rectification we can to that history, and become more educated about it in the process. That's it.
Okay. So I'm in support of this proposal as well. I share Sean's statement, and Randy agreed with it as well, that it's a bigger conversation than this board to figure out what the name should be. I actually think most appropriately and most beneficially, I would support the names that the tribes agree upon, and that's what we have in front of us, or at least that's my understanding. And that's because I can pronounce Mistahe, and we can learn how to read it, and all that stuff. We're smart. You know, it's a statement of fact that the S word that is on that mountain is a racist, sexist term. And so I'll read a quote. I like this. There is a ski resort, S Valley Ski Resort, that decided last fall to change their name. We don't know what it'll be yet, but I was reading about their decision, and Ron Cohen, their president and COO, wrote this. And when other people have better words than you do, use those words, right? So he writes, it can be jarring to face the stark ugliness that is embodied by the same word that names a place so magnificently beautiful, a place so many of us hold dear, and that certainly is an accurate description of that mountain. By taking this action, we confront and acknowledge the hard truths, and we recognize that our love of this place and our cherished memories do not justify continuing to use such a divisive and hurtful word. Today, we do our part to help retire this word to its place in history books. I think that's very well said. That mountain is far too beautiful for as many people as hear that term to look at that mountain and have that experience. I will note, among the things I've learned as I've done research on this, and I should have known this, I'm embarrassed I didn't, is that Indigenous women face the highest rates of violence, including sexual violence, of any demographic in our country. This is about a past wrong, and it's also about violence today. And if changing the name of one mountain can prevent one rape or one death, or help change an attitude that brings those rates back down, I'm all for it. And so I'm in support of this proposal. And the last thing I have here that I wanted to note is that we've seen this name get changed in states like Washington, Michigan, Oregon, Iowa, Wyoming, Montana. This has happened, it's all over the country in the last 20 years or so. So that's I think all I have to say. I support this proposal. I welcome Sean and Randy to add any words, and then we can talk about what kind of direction we want to come out of this.
Well, I think that it's clear what our position is tonight as we have spoken it, and we happen to have Ms. Runyon on the line, well, she's gone now, but she heard it and she knows. And I think we have issued staff direction in the past, and I think we should issue staff direction to our new county attorney to contact Ms. Runyon and the Bureau of Geographic Names and let them know that we're fully in support of the Northern Cheyenne proposal. And if we need to pass something or a resolution, I'm happy to do that too. But if we do, then I want to have a special meeting by Thursday or something to do it, because this is something I would hold a special meeting for. But if we don't need to do that, we simply give that direction that Clear Creek is fully in support. We communicate to both the Colorado Geographic Naming Advisory Board and the Bureau of Geographic Names. The reason for that is that sometimes, and I can't imagine it in this case, sometimes states don't go along, and Ms. Runyon has made it clear to me that the Bureau of Geographic Names doesn't necessarily even listen to states and governors if they think they got it wrong. So, and in a good way, from as I've looked at the history of that. One thing I would like to say tonight is that our wishes should go out to Silver Little Eagle. She is a member of the Northern Cheyenne Tribal Council. She was recently beaten horribly just in the last few days, and is lying injured from that, or might have even been here this evening. She has been in some of our meetings already with the Mistahe naming, the Mistahe Coalition, which is behind this Mistahe Coalition behind this renaming, and also is working on a number of different issues like Mount Evans and others too. And Silver sat in some meetings with us, and I'm was really heartbroken to read that she was beaten up where she lives, I believe in Lame Deer on the reservation, just in the last few days.
The only thing I'd like to add is just to say thank you to our neighbors from other states and other nations and other communities for taking the time to join us tonight and express your views. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well said. Okay, so Peter, do you need more specificity in your direction? As I understand it, we're asking you to respond in the affirmative to this.
No, I'm good. I have enough information that Randy had provided to me, as well as the discussion tonight, to inform the communication, and I'll make sure that the board is aware of it.
I see Kate Simota just put into chat that actually Silver was the violence against her occurred in Billings, Montana, not around Lame Deer. So just for correction.
Okay. Well, I think that we have heard a lot of great comment and had some dialogue and arrived at direction. Any final words before we adjourn?
Thanks to everybody for being here. Again, I agree. Thank you, Sean. Well said. Thanks for all of our friends, Rick, Fred, Chester, and a whole bunch of other names and people I see here tonight.
Okay, thank you. We are adjourned.